Sorry, Steve. I was not sure if I hit record, but hey, I did it. I'm proud of us. Proud of me, proud of you, proud of us. Um, anyways, hi Steve, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful.
Look at that. He is on point today, people. This is the Stuff Summer Says podcast with
Steve,
Steve. Steve, we are joined this week by a quick guest, but a good guest. The man making delicious cheesesteaks that I've been ranting and raving about now for 2 weeks. Pat Romano of the We Are in Philipsburg joins us for a good interview about not just about his cooking, his food, but really the business experience in State College and how important that is to him. And I think that's interesting. I think that's a good guest. We've never really had somebody on from the business side. We talk about sports business and sports media, but Penn State football is very much important to the local economy. So it's nice to hear from somebody in that type of position. So we will let you take a listen to that, and we'll be back after this. Steve, we are joined tonight by the man making us very well known in the cheesesteak community right now.
got to be
The
well known
other
in some community, baby.
Hey, it works for us. It works for us. Pat of the We Are In. How are you, Pat? Good
pretty
to see
good.
you.
The other, not the Pat's cheesesteak guy that uh, bailed out on the challenge to come to State College and compete with us.
We like those. We
Thanks.
like these cheesesteaks from this Pat better than that other Pat. That's not even a top three cheesesteak in Philly for me. So we'll leave that for a later
Yeah,
point.
throwing down some stuff now.
Already making people angry, Steve. That's that I'm good at that. Pat, I guess let's begin with this. I think what we want to focus with you tonight is both you are, a fan of Penn State, obviously, both by the hat and everything that you do, the name of your business, everything behind you in your business. But I think also you're a business in State College, and it really relies on football weekends, especially, having a motel component to your business. How important is Penn State football to a local business owner like you?
And well, Penn State is and has always been huge to the growth of the Center County region. You can't put enough emphasis on what they've done over the years because we all survive and grow with the school. It's like the rooms and stuff like that. A lot of people get angry because the prices go up, but during game weekends and things like that, Arts Fest, that's really where you make your money. The rest of it, it's not like you're booked up all year long. There's probably 15 great events that are being held, and that's where you can really do it. But it's just been, and this Penn State community is its own thing. Even you don't have to have gone to Penn State. Just living around in Pennsylvania and wearing your blue and white and being a blue collar type of person is really something that we wear. They're pretty close to the chest there.
I guess for those that aren't familiar with the We Are In, what is the story? I feel like, and I said this when we talked about your cheesesteaks, that I keep hearing about it, and people keep telling me that I gotta go there, gotta have their food, gotta check this place out. And I finally had the food, and let me tell you what, as I mentioned, you're not charging enough for those cheesesteaks. You could charge me $100, and I would gladly pay that. But what is the We Are In story, I guess, so to speak?
So basically, there's this building that's been empty in Philipsburg. It was there empty for like 17 years, and I'm driving by all the time. And then we have a really nice tailgate that we used to have. I was a general contractor, and people at the tailgate are just like, we need places to stay. We need place to stay. So I would let people stay in my hunting camp, and then they would stay in our RV. And at one point, I said to my wife, maybe we should probably get this place because maybe these people will rent rooms and stop sleeping all over our property. And she packaged that up with, well, will you get all your memorabilia out of the house too? And then I'm all in. And she went all in once I said I'll get my friends and my stuff out.
So did everything get out? The memorabilia's out, and the friends are staying at the inn too, or nobody's staying at your house?
Yeah, it's. She said you're only doing this as a hobby and for fun, and it turned into where we folded up the general contracting business, and we're now doing this, and it's become what we do for a living. The cooking thing, I'll never forget. There was a guy, Bees Bonner. He's a big Penn State guy. He was sitting out on the patio the one day when we first opened. He said, how long have you been a chef? And I looked at my watch, and I was like, 2 days and 4 hours. And he started laughing, and I was like, no, I'm serious. And he said, well, you probably owned a restaurant. I was like, no, I cooked with my grandmother and my mom and state stuff in Philly, which that's a whole different thing. But to come bringing that Philly flavor around, it's a whole different thing. Center County, I've been coming here my whole life, and when people used to say, "Go get a cheesesteak," oh, you got to try this one, you got to try that one. It's just not the same. The understanding and expectation is different than Philadelphia. You make a sandwich like that in Philly, they might come with pitchforks, and you're done.
So when you talked about the end, how do the cheesesteaks end up in the stadium? Like, do you approach them? Do they approach you? Like, and there's a lot more small businesses in there this year as they've changed things. So what did that process look like from your side?
So I know some of the logic behind it from some backdoor stuff that I don't want to say backdoor because it sounds like I'm involved in something, but I'm on a thing called the Fan Council, and my next meeting is my last after 5 years. And in my 5 years there, we've tried to explore different ways of getting people into the stands faster. And my first thing at every meeting was always beer. If you have beer, people are going to go inside, so they're not sitting there trying to drink that last 3 beers right before kickoff and then run in, and then there's a log jam at the gates. I said, so once we got the beer, I was like, well, food, because especially on a noon game, people might not want to hang around outside. They'd like to get in a little earlier, but they're trying to eat something besides what they have in the stadium. And I think the group for 5 years of pounding that finally got through to where they decided, hey, look, let's start getting some of these offerings together, especially when they're going to be doing all these renovations on the one side. I envision, and I don't know this for any certainty, but I see them put like some sort of a food court, and I think they're testing the waters right now. We did a thing in the spring. I don't know if you guys heard about this one, but we did a cheesesteak eating contest where we made 2 6-foot cheesesteaks that weighed 18 pounds each. We had 4 of the offensive linemen and 4 of the defensive linemen. Each team got a cheesesteak, 18 pounds. So I will say that the defense won, but we also brought in Blair Thomas, was the coach for the offensive side, and Justin King coached the defensive side. I was the ref. Graham Spaniard did the coin toss. We raised money for Special Olympics, and it was just a really, really good time. And at that point, the players were saying different things, and I had done some NIL stuff with food for the players, and now we cater at Lash for the football team. So it was probably a natural step for us to go into the stadium. They want to really have local flavors. Kevin, Eric and Tyler are heading this thing up, and they're really doing a great job at looking for local flavors to make it more of a personal thing in the county, instead of just bringing in a ton of people from outside. And I think it's really working nicely.
You've been a Penn State fan for, I would assume, all of your life, judging by the memorabilia. What was it like the first time you saw your business name inside Beaver Stadium?
Oh, wow. Oh, man. Well, the only thing is I wanted to change it and call it We Are in Beaver Stadium instead of Philipsburg, but that's probably a little much to try to do. It's amazing. It really, people are like, how did you do it? How did you do it? How did you do it? I'm just like, they called up and said, hey, what do you want to do? And I'm like, all right, what do you need me to do? And we're like, all right, well, let's do it. And here we are. First year, there's things, because here's the biggest thing, Darian, and Steve, when you were going into there and you're in an undiscovered country, okay, and you're trying to guesstimate what you're going to do, and my team, they're younger than I am. And they're sitting there like, well, the 7:30 West Virginia game, so now we know what to do for the Iowa game. Iowa game's a whiteout. Same time, Iowa game's also a Big Ten game. Iowa game's also going to be cold and rainy, So all these different factors, like the Delaware game's a noon game. It's not going to be the same as a Michigan noon game in November. So, we got to keep playing things by ear. And the challenge, I give a lot of credit to my team. They're amazing with keeping up with the demand and being able to know when to cut off a little bit, because it's looking like, all right, hey, we're up by 30 points. Now people are going to start leaving because they want to beat the traffic. But the challenges in there are rough. And I don't envy any of the other stands and what they're trying to do to accomplish their goals.
How have your game plans been? Sorry, Darian. How have you, if you evaluate your game plans for the first half of the season, right? Forget the on-field stuff. How have you done, do you think, through the first half of the season?
We've done as well as expected. The only thing where we had a glitch, so we're in the student section, but we can't cook up there. All our cooking happens in the Northwest section. So we throw all these steaks up and put them in a warmer, and we run them up there. And the Delaware game, we kind of dropped the ball because we went down the north side, the west side, and you get down there and the passway was blocked off because of the team coming out for halftime. I think they block it off like for 15 minutes because some of the kids leave early. We got held up, and there was a 32-minute period where we didn't sell a cheesesteak coming into halftime and in the beginning of halftime. But you learn from that, because now I go back, we have a meeting. It's like, hey, listen, don't ever go that way again. We go this way. It's only an extra 20 steps, but take the extra 20 steps around. So, yeah.
I know Dan's got a question, but I got to follow that up. Italian family on the other side. Is that how you said it to everybody that day? Like, were those the words? Don't ever do that. Like, it just felt like it might have come with a little more emotion. I'm not sure.
There was definitely some passion and some emotion. At the same time, I respect them because my staff really just want to. We're in the stadium. They're proud to be in there, and they love it. They absolutely love it. So they're not doing anything purposely. Everything they do, they just want to really shine.
Okay, cool. Go ahead, Darian. Sorry, cut you off twice.
No, you're good. You're good, Steve. Pat, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I do want to know, what is the secret to your cheesesteaks? Why are they so good? Why am I ranting and raving about them, telling every single person I know to eat these cheesesteaks? Because
back in Philadelphia, I grew up in Overbrook section, and we had some really good cheesesteak spots. And like we said earlier, there's some of the places are tourist areas. I was all over the city. I was an inspector in Philly on HUD houses and, single family and multifamily homes. I was all over the city, and I had steaks everywhere. But there was never one that stacked up to the original Jim steaks, not the one on South Street, not the other ones, the original Jim's. There was a woman in there, Evelyn, who you walked in. She knew if there was 200 people in line, she remembered you if you were only there once before, what you wanted. And I think they used to use lard. The only thing I don't do, because you can't do that anymore. But our rolls come from down there. We use ribeye. We use original cheese whiz in the stadium, but we also will put American, Cooper Sharp, all the different cheeses, whatever anybody wants. Jen likes provolone, so we have to make sure we have everything as far as the cheeses go. But the roll makes the sandwich. If you don't have the right roll, you can't make a good cheesesteak. You can't make a good Italian hoagie. But once you have the roll, you're at 80% there. Then it's up to you to really put it over the top.
That was honestly, that was the most surprising part of when I bit into that cheesesteak, was how fresh the bread was. Because I think, we all have been to stadiums before where it feels like it's been sitting out for 10 hours type thing. So I do appreciate that you can tell you're using local ingredients, good ingredients. So I got to ask, Pat, what is your cheesesteak order? What are you ordering on a cheesesteak?
We actually have one called the Chef Pat's Way. It's got whiz and American, because I can't make up my mind. It's got fried onions and mushrooms. It's got hot cherry peppers and ketchup.
Oh, all right. And I respect that.
There with the ketchup thing. When I was growing up in Philly and we were making sandwiches in shops, 4 out of 5 had ketchup on them. And people are like, oh, would you go into a steak shop and, like a Longhorn or something and put ketchup on? I'm like, no, but I'm not going to put cheese on it and jam it in a roll either. It's on my plate. I'm going to eat it like that. But if you like a burger and you like ketchup, there's nothing wrong with putting it on a cheesesteak. It's delicious. Pairs well.
All right. Pat, I don't want to keep you too much longer. This is your moment to plug. What would you like to plug here and say?
Well, I will say this. Our cheesesteak sales are only probably 8 to 10% of our business, because we have surf and turf. We have a lot of Italian dishes. We have a lot of really good stuff that was cooked in my family from back as far as I can remember. And it's really worth giving it a try. People come over, aren't disappointed. And I might have an announcement for you guys later on, and I'll call you and we'll come back on and do it, because we're looking for college.
All right. Let us know.
They told us, well, everybody told me about the Alfredo sauce and it's good, but the red sauce is what tastes like grandma's. I mean, yes. it's we haven't been disappointed by anything we've gotten there. So I'm curious, construction or chefing, which is harder, or
it's two totally different things. But for me, I loved cooking so much growing up that I came from a neighborhood where there were a lot of guys that became chefs and had their own restaurants and stuff. And my thing was that I never wanted to put a price tag on the thing that I really loved and was very therapeutic for me at times in my life, because I just felt like that it would lose its luster for me, but it hasn't. Because when people come in and people are happy and people are saying good things, they're leaving smiling. They're saying, hey, I never had a blackened salmon like that, and I was down in New Orleans getting it. Your Maryland crab cake is better than anything in Maryland. We should be ashamed of ourselves. All these things, when people are saying that, it makes all of it worth it. And you go back and tell your guys and girls in the kitchen, and they're all just like, it's a really good climate to work in.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, Pat, thank you very much for joining us. We are up in Philipsburg, but also, as you mentioned, 2 stadium locations, one behind the student section and one kind of down in my corner, which is NA and B area. Be sure to check them out.
See you soon.
Steve, you've been there in person, and everybody is like, we're not. Pat is not paying us. Everybody keeps telling me about this place, and I'm just telling, like, I think this sounds like a good business. I think we may need to check it out in person. That's all. Maybe
I think it'd be a
Steve
wise
and Darian
decision.
date.
I think it'd be a wise decision. The two best places in Center County, that's not true. Two of the best places in Center County that I like to eat are in Philipsburg. There's the We Are In, there's Brown Dog Catering, both small places that have, grown their business and are doing good things. And not there aren't great places in State College, but we're a little bit closer to Philipsburg, so it's easy. And what energy from Pat, right? Like, I mean, that's the kind of person that can make me think about going inside the stadium again. I mean, lots of energy, lots of excitement, happy to be there.
Wow.
So, he might not only be a chef and a former contractor, but he's part cheerleader. God bless him.
Wow. No, seriously, that was, I think the energy thing, and when you meet somebody like that and they have that type of energy, and you're getting good, like, you can see why they're passionate, why they are producing good food and producing a good experience. So good luck to Pat and everybody involved with the We Are In. Appreciate
and kudos to Penn
on.
State for finding local people.
I think that's a big
we
thing.
talked about the beer early on, right? I think kudos to Penn State for finding different food options, but finding local food options. And that requires them to change their model a little bit. Like, we didn't push on money with him, but I'm pretty sure they aren't paying the money to Learfield that Pepsi or somebody else is. They found a way to make this work, to put these people in the stadiums to be partners on the food level, at least. And I think that's important. One size doesn't always fit all for your sponsorship stuff and things like that. And I think businesses like that and the beer vendors and whatever else they're localish, give it an important, personalized, Penn State specific, Beaver Stadium specific flavor that makes it better for everybody. So kudos to everybody who made it happen.
It is very noticeable, those types of changes, and they're little subtle changes. But now when I walk in we usually go in at gate D and kind of walk around the corner there. There's about 3 or 4 local food vendors that are there, and it feels comforting. Like, it genuinely feels comforting because it feels unique. Like, you feel a sense of pride over that. And I think as a fan, that's important. And I think that is why, the lines at some of these places have been long. And so, and it sounds like Pat's really selling cheesesteaks. So good for him. Anyways, that's all I got there. Steve, I'm gonna throw a curveball at you. You ready?
I've never hit the curve, but go ahead.
Okay, I know. I think we have to briefly talk about it. I think it's now seeped into Penn State-dom that we have to talk about it. It's the biggest story in sports media. It's Taylor Swift. She's everywhere. She's dating Travis Kelce. But I think the most stunning situation about the fact that she's dating Travis Kelce isn't that she's dating Travis Kelce. It's that this morning I got onto Instagram and saw a post from probably top tier fan of the podcast, Maddie Pryor, who had a picture of Taylor Swift and Ross Travis, former Penn State men's basketball player, together. And they weren't just together, they were in the same suite at the stadium. If you would have given me 1,000 guesses on people that you would have said it's somebody very random, Ross Travis not even coming in the first 1,000. So I don't have a point there. I just wanted to say I'm having a tough time reconciling it, even though I found a paper trail of how they're connected, which is all through Travis.
I was gonna say, because he's probably the tight end whisperer, right? Like, to tell people what sports is, because he got signed by the Chiefs out of college, or played for the Chiefs out of college when he made the transition from basketball to football, right? So I'm sure there's a connection there. Maybe he's the guy that's there to say, this is what just happened on the field, right? To help people. Like, maybe he's the quarterback or the tight end whisperer.
It appears that Travis and Ross are best friends. Like, it appears they are very tight. Like, they've went to Vegas and Coachella. It's just wild. I don't know. It's just wild that guy that I watch play basketball at Penn State is now hanging out.
Clearly has other skills than basketball. He's got good friend skills.
But it's not even just Taylor Swift. It's Taylor Swift and Hugh Jackman and Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds and basically every famous person. How do we get into that boost, Steve? That's
because you're too excited about it. Ross is just like, yo, how are you? Like, yo, what's up? Right? He doesn't care about that. They're not famous to him. So if he plays it on the DL and they think he belongs with them.
Again, I'm thinking. All right. I just want to bring it up. Do you care about Taylor? Remove Ross Travis from the situation. Do you care about, like, is it from the sports
No,
media
I
perspective?
think that no, I think the sports media piece that I'm interested in is it's kind of like the offend me stuff with fans of anything else, like regular announcers or whatever else. Yes, they are going to cut away to Taylor Swift. They just are. That's the gig. They would be irresponsible if they didn't, right? And I don't understand how it hurts coverage of the game or what kind of wonderful insight they think they're going to miss for the 3 seconds they see her face. It's not like somebody's going to explain a play or do something amazing on the broadcast they're going to miss. So I guess I'm intrigued by the level of angst and anger even that people have that she's getting attention while at the game. I just
I I I I think it's a great thing. I mean, I think there are more people watching football right now than it was the most watched NBC broadcast since the one of the Super Bowls, recent
right,
Super Bowls.
right. So they have to feature her, and she's not hurting the broadcast. She's not hurting the quality of
Yeah.
football broadcast or the quality of the game itself. I just don't understand that anger from people, right?
I mean,
Discomfort,
and
whatever it is.
the other thing is, look, the NFL is trying to grow globally, right? Like, you just had a game in London, you've got a game in Frankfurt. I think they're doing a game next year, or maybe two games in Spain. Um, this is like, take advantage of this. This is a good opportunity to grow globally, to get in front of people that have never watched a football game, which is probably more than a vast majority of the world at this point, I would
Right.
say, but I would be willing to bet that, Taylor Swift is probably, I would say, the most famous person on the planet. So I don't know. I just wanted to briefly discuss that
Did you
with you.
watch the Disney Plus stuff at all?
No, I did. I caught it on Twitter because
Right.
that was while we were midst travel. I want to go back and watch it because I look, Toy Story is my
And I
favorite
think they're
Disney
both good for
movie.
the game. I think both, just
Yeah,
in different ways, they're both good for the game. And the
yeah,
NFL doesn't do a lot that's not. They know how to make the brand better and protect the shield in all
yeah,
kinds of ways.
yeah. Um, no, I'm interested to go back and watch it because I saw a lot of people that have kids. They're like, my kids are loving this. So, anyways, I just want to hit on that real quick. Moving on. Football game. That's why I was traveling. There was a football game this weekend. Penn State won. So that's good. Um,
Were you
let me
concerned
collect
in the
let me
stadium?
collect my thoughts. Let me collect my thoughts here for a hot second and say that I went back and watched the game, and I feel much better after watching the game back. Like, if you haven't watched the game back, Penn State looked fine. Like, obviously they did not have a great start. That they very much look fine, and I think it. The part of all of this is there is a human emotion element to this. Think in whatever context. Think of it in the Penn State football context. If you're going to a Penn State game and Penn State is playing Delaware, Indiana, Rutgers, well, maybe not Rutgers, but Delaware, Indiana, one of those types of teams, you're not going to be that excited. You're not going to be that amped up. Penn State's playing Iowa, or Penn State is playing in the whiteout or West Virginia. You're going to be fired up. You're going to be looking forward to that, and that human element carries over into the locker room, and I think that is what we saw a little bit of on Saturday. I don't know. I think they need to let Drew screw up. And it's weird to say it, but like, we kind of kept saying amongst our group, like, let him throw the pick. Like, if he gets that, then he's free from it. I think he's just trying to be a little too careful. Let him throw the ball, and I think everything will be fine. So, anyways, I know that was a little bit of a rambling and smattering, but it's a long and winded answer to say no. I'm not terribly concerned. I'm not even concerned. I'm not concerned. Period.
But you weren't concerned in the moment?
I was anxious in the moment.
Okay.
Um, but I know how this team has played, and it's kind of difficult because I've been trying to, like, prove the data on this outside of just the scores. But I think now Penn State is 100 and it would be 108 to outscoring opponents 108-17 off of the top of my head in the second half. The locker room adjustments that they must be making, or the changes that they're making, I don't think we're talking about that enough. Like, I think that is a benefit of having both Mike Yurcich, who is a far better offensive coordinator, Manny Diaz, who is a former head coach and a very good defensive mind, probably one of the better defensive minds in the country right now. I think that is not being talked about enough, because it would be nice. Yes, Penn State can't get behind in a situation against Michigan or Ohio State, right? And that if we're talking through everything through that context, which we are in this season, but I don't know. I feel very safe with the coaching staff and everything that they've done. Like they beat Northwestern in the second half 31-3. That is a matter of fact, and they looked very relatively pretty sharp doing it, even if that wasn't their best game of the year doing it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think the opening kickoff, fumble, you give up the 3 points there, and you're like, oh, I mean, if you don't see it and you don't see if you see the score with no context at halftime or early in the second quarter, you're like, what's going on? And I get it. I get there's slow starts. I get that there's also people doing this, and I guess I'm just in the one. It's hard for me to say I'm in the 1-0 camp, because there's a part of me that just I'm in the just win baby camp. Right? Like, I think it's more appropriate that, like, it doesn't matter what happens when you get there. It's just a W. And
who are you, and what have you done with Steve?
I know who are I know I had the thing defending the coach, saying he needed more respect 2 weeks ago. And I'm almost saying I'm in the 1-0 camp. I'm never going to be in the 1-0 for the picture camp, but still, they just got. I mean, you're going to have. I think that's the part. Fan wise, I understand it, and I don't think the media have done it too much this week. Maybe a little bit, but it's like every week. Oh, this didn't happen. Oh, the tight ends the first week. Oh my gosh, the slow starts. Oh, this. You just got to have something to create, something to write, so you do it. I don't think it's irresponsible, but I think it's really okay to say, yeah, they won the game. Like, that's what they're supposed to do. And I know that doesn't make a story. That doesn't make it, doesn't sound sexy, and those are the critiques people throw at the media. And I'm not trying to throw shade that way, but I do think sometimes we get caught up in how it happens. And all that matters is that it happens. Because if you're going to tell me a team's going to go 12-0 in a season, there's going to be an ugly game or two in there, right? There just has to be. They're not all going to be blowouts. They're not all going to be dominance. And on the road against this team that was working hard, they did what they were supposed to do and did it fairly well.
Well, look at a Georgia even. I mean, they just kind of stubbed their toe a little bit against Auburn, right? And I think maybe that Auburn team might be a hair better than the numbers show. But they just stubbed their toe against Auburn, and yet they're fine. Like, I think you put it in a good perspective of, we're gonna, regardless of how this season shakes out, right? Like, knock on wood, at worst, this is a 10-2 season, regular season, and I think anything below that is a failure for certain. But it's, knock on wood, it's a 10-2 season at worst. You're gonna look back on that and think, oh yeah, Penn State won that game, 41-13. Like, you're just gonna look at that score and not even bat an eye at it.
Right.
So I wanted to add that there. Man, I have to say it, Steve, and I no offense to the fine people of Northwestern. First off, there weren't that was probably one that was, for a game being as far away from State College as that one was. That was probably the heaviest mix of Penn State home team fans. It was probably at least 35% Penn State. But man, and I know I said it last time, I forgot. I forgot about Ryan Field and what a not great dump it is, or not a great place it is. It's not great.
Weren't you quaint and encouraging and somewhat nice about it before you left?
I was. Okay. But there's no hot food. The hot food is only like hot dogs. The thing that baffled me, for as many smart people that go there, their scoreboard is located in the corner of the end zone. And there's the Northwestern locker room comes out in front of it. And so you can't see probably a bottom quarter of the scoreboard because of the fact that the locker room is there. And it's just like, nobody thought, hey, we should probably up that by about 10 feet, and that solves the entire problem.
Well, the sports people thought that, but the academic people probably said, we don't have the money for that, right? Like, even though the athletic department's probably they're not making more money than the academic department. But yeah, it's a how much do you care thing, right? So yeah. I genuinely feel bad, because I'm sure that there are people that genuinely care about Northwestern football and want it to succeed. And, I think it's had a couple good years there. They went to the Rose Bowl that one time. They've,
even the last few years, they went to the Big Ten title game, twice in the last 5 years. But it just feels like nobody cares about it. It's kind of sad. And I don't know. Makes you moments like that, and this is gonna sound whatever preachy, but moments like that make you appreciate what you have at Penn State. I think is
No, that's probably true. Like I think, I mean, there's such a sports culture here, right? That it's just that's what people come for. That's not what people come for to Northwestern. I mean, it's not the primary thing most people come there for. You come for the city, you come from the academic program, you come for whatever. It might not be the primary thing here, but it's darn close. It's second or third for a lot of people, if at least undergrads, if it isn't the first thing. Okay, well, there's this big community, there's this big event. You could have a portion of the undergrad class at Northwestern logically not know that they have sports teams, perhaps, or be aware of it or be part of it. Here, it's just kind of hard to avoid.
Yeah,
and that's not.
I mean, that was the thing. Even during the game, well into the second quarter, at one point I looked over at their student section, and I swear that they had more band members than they did students in the student section. That's not an exaggeration. So you feel bad for those students that probably do care enough to show up and take time out of their Saturday for that. Anyways, I don't know. I feel 5 games in, I feel very much fine on Penn State. I think you have to be patient, and this all comes down to 2 football games. And if you unlock one of those levels, you probably get another good, big, important football game after that most of us want to see happen, especially this year with it being the last year of the 4-team playoff. So I think it's just as we keep talking about, be patient. I think we'll see how this all plays out.
And it has to be a patient time for Penn State fans last week, this coming week, and next week, because your team is not going to be part of the discussion nationally in the next 3 weeks. It's going to be frustrating for some fans, right? Why aren't they mentioning us? Why aren't they saying anything about us? Because they're not seeing you. I mean, luckily, not a lot of people saw Northwestern. I mean, it was a great game, but people who would have watched it would have said, "Oh, that first half, right?" And they'd have been dinged for that, even though it probably wasn't true. This week, there's no game. Next week, UMass doesn't matter. Next week they're on the SEC plan, right? You're in the conference schedule, and then find a dog to play somewhere in the middle of your schedule, which is great scheduling for them. Kudos. But nobody's going to talk about them the next 3 weeks because they're not playing a game that matters. And I think that's going to frustrate some fans as some stuff works out and Washington wins and some other teams win. And people say, why aren't they talking about us? You've got Ohio State, and that's when that'll happen, right? And you got to be patient to get there.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good way to look at it. All right. Anything else you want to say about the football team?
5-0. Woohoo!
No. Cool. All right. Let's move on. It is the first week of Penn State hockey. I'm excited about it. I believe they open up the road against Long Island off the top of my head. Okay. It kind of hit me today. Like, the weather hasn't been October-y today, but I was like, oh, it's the second day of October. Like, there's NHL hockey next week. I am optimistic about the Penn State men's hockey team this year. I am not. I think my expectations compared to last year are a little bit lower, just given they lost a lot of their scoring. I think I wrote down it was 45% of their goals they essentially lost to graduation or the NHL or well, not transfer, but kind of moving on. To me, I think the goal this year is to make the tournament. You play in a very stacked conference this year. I think every team except for maybe one was ranked in the initial poll when it came out. When the initial poll came out this time around, I had only saw the Big Ten media poll, and Penn State was finished to pick picked to finish 6th. And I was like, what the hell? And then I remembered that you've got Notre Dame, Michigan, Ohio State, all kind of sort of ahead of you. It's like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. I think Penn State, and Penn State's number 16. I think that's very fair. But I think the goal this year, even though they were 1 goal away from, going to the Frozen Four, and I think that is still probably the ultimate goal, or that would be the first high water mark that Penn State still hasn't achieved yet. I think that is the goal this year is just to make the tournament, be good enough to make the tournament, survive non-conference play. Their non-conference schedule this year is pretty pathetic, it's kind of taking the football model of, okay, like conference is going to beat us up. Let's not really have to worry ourselves too much in the non-conference play. There's no reason that Penn State, shouldn't have more than 1 or 2 losses in non-conference play this year, just with who they play. So I think the other thing is you got Liam Soulier back, and I think that's a big thing in college hockey. If you've got a good goalie, you can go a long way. Steve, what is your expectation for Penn State men's hockey this year?
I think they've got decent leadership. Like I said, lost a lot of goals, but I think they've got some decent leadership. It'll be interesting to see the vibe of the team, just what their personality plays out being. And I think, make the tournament. I mean, they're basically starting the season on the bubble, right? 6th in the conference and 16th in the national poll. They're basically starting the season on the bubble, and they're playing. They're going to, in theory, probably in reality, do great in non-conference. Build up a record. It's going to look interesting. And then you're going to be hoping for splits during the conference play, right? And maybe steal one, somewhere along the line, because it's just the conference is that tough. I think if they don't make the tournament, right, because you're 1 goal away from being the Frozen Four last year, it's a disappointment, right? You can't to go from there down. Not that programs don't, but you're looking for that consistency. And I appreciate it's a challenge, and they don't, on paper, have the talent that some other teams have in terms of NHL draft picks and things like that. But they've got, I don't know if that's what Guy Gadowski wants either. I think he wants his players to play as a team and find that bigger than us approach. And when they do that, it works. So my expectation, I think, is tournament, right? I think if they miss out, even though it's a really tough conference, right, and it's going to be a challenge to finish in the top 16 nationally if you only finish in the top 5 in your conference. But it's, arguably the best conference in college hockey. So we'll see how it goes.
I was thinking about it through like that lens. You hit on it there a little bit of do you go build these super nuts teams like the Michigan teams for the last really 3 years have had essentially every Hughes brother and Adam Fantelli and all these other just insanely good dudes. And even this year, you've got Dylan Duke and Rutger Brody, and it's like, okay, like, where do you go the Penn State way? And I appreciate that. I think it seems like there's an emphasis on team building. And I think that is, you look at some of the teams that have done well, obviously, like the Denver teams come to mind, that Union team that won the title. Like, you find that one dude that is a dude, and then you have a good cohesive team the rest of the way, you can go pretty far. I think it is kind of what we've learned with college hockey. And I think that is, it appears to be Guy Gadowski's approach. I don't know who that person is. I think obviously like the Aiden Fink thing is exciting, but I don't know. I think expectations are reasonably set at making the tournament. Let me ask you this. That should be the expectation every year. Like that is the baseline expectation, and much in the way talk about that, especially in the future with Penn State football. Okay, I'm just making sure.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that's what we're led to believe the program is, right? From facility to support to in the conference, they're a top 20 program every year. If you're top 20, you got to beat 4 other teams to make the tournament, basically. So yeah, I think it should be tournament every year. And it kind of goes back to what Pat Romano said a little bit about, Penn State, blue collar guy, blah, blah, blah. I don't know that I see that always in football, right? Like, because not that the players aren't hardworking and whatever else, but we know these are 5-star players in some instances and people who are recruited to be here. And then I like in hockey and even in wrestling, right? There's not a maybe that's what happens at 125 this year. There's not a dud in that lineup, a guy that wasn't recruited by everybody. In some ways, hockey has the ability to play out that blue collar, workmanlike, go at it approach, that mentality than almost any other sport in some ways. So, and that's what I think is enjoyable about them. I think they're not as watching them, they're not all draft picks and whatever else. They got to figure out how to do it together to make it work. And when they do it, it's kind of fun. When they don't, okay, but when they do, it's fun.
This will be the 10th year of Pagula. This will be, but the 11th season. Steve, you've been to a lot of Penn State hockey games. You've been to more than I have. Any that particularly stand out, or any player that particularly stands out
It was like a 7-0 game against Notre Dame a couple of years ago. That was a lot of fun as a fan. They just beat the snot out of them at Pagula. I think Pagula itself is the best part when it's working. I think
it's a cool
not
experience.
There haven't been great. Evan Barrett might have been one of the best players I've seen on the ice there in terms of sheer talent. And there have been a lot of them, but he just felt. I mean, he went pro. It felt like, I don't know. There was a different vibe when he was on the ice. I think Xander Lampa this year is going to be an interesting dude, and I think there's a mentality there of toughness without taking a penalty, or what's that line? And I think that's that for a team like this, it's going to be finding that toughness without ending up in the box. That's going to be the difference in them being average or really pretty good. Because you got to find a way to skate that line to deliver blows, to send a message of who you are, to not get overwhelmed by anybody without ending up in the box and costing your team.
And I think that's kind of the way Penn State has played. I think is finding that line, and
right.
It's a team that like can play on the edge of that line or right at the cusp of that line is a much better hockey program than it is necessarily could be, given the talent kind of going back to that part of the equation. Mm-hmm. All right, cool. I just wanted to pick your brain there. This week's old guy, young guy. I think it's your turn.
Brought to you by Penn State Residential Dining. I took my freshman seminar class to residential dining today. Saw the head of residential dining, Jim Meineke, who gave him kind of a behind the scenes glimpse at the 250,000 pounds of cheese and 250,000 pounds of chicken they buy each year, and all the things they do, and theme dinners and the different dining halls. And so it came up about finding the menu. So I asked them, like, oh, do you guys do you know what's on the menu? Do you use the app? Do you go? And they looked at me like, you would walk blindly into one of these places and not know what's available? I'm like, yeah, all the time. It was the only option I had. I walked in the dining hall. Whatever was on the row was what we had. But generationally, the Chicken Cosmo was a little before me. It ended just when I was here. And that was like the menu item that people, when the Chicken Cosmo was on, they loved them. So I'm curious, is there an item or guilty pleasure food item or regular item that was the thing when you were at Penn State?
So the thing, and it still is the thing, and we've talked about this recently, is still the West cookie, right? Like that's still far enough removed now that I need to confirm with somebody. Still a thing, still good, great. Nothing better than just one of those West cookies roll off, and then you put some ice cream on it. But you know what thing? There are two things that I loved in my specific days as Penn State. Number one was in South. I don't know if it's still there. There used to be a little burrito stand over in the corner type thing. And they made they would toast these burritos in a panini press, because I think that's all they really had. But it just added this like little crunch to the burrito. Perfect. Great. You know what? The other thing I loved about the dining hall, it had, I could go to anywhere and buy these ingredients and make them even at any point in college. I love the endless amount of cereal that you could eat at the dining hall. That was one of the, like it did not matter at all. It's just like, I think I'm gonna have some cereal right now because it's good. It's just, yeah.
That was true. That was coming. I came from a really small high school, right? So coming in and seeing the big bins of cereal and the dispensers was big, and the game changer. That even today, like if we would go to a food hall or a place that had like a buffet, if they had the big heavy handled cooler that you lifted up and the chocolate milk came out, like with. I could just get underneath and drink chocolate milk, or just go glass after glass of that. So
find something you love as much as Steve's loves chocolate milk. That's all I gotta say.
If you can find that thing, stick with it the whole time. So yes.
There you go. That's a beautiful message from this week's podcast. All right. Anything else this week? Chicken Cosmos weren't a thing when you were a student?
They were. I guess I wasn't a big Chicken Cosmo guy. Okay. They were still on the menu, but
I think everyone your age talks about them.
No, they stopped after me. After me. But I don't know that I was like, oh, Chicken Cosmo. I don't know what I was still, even as I guess I was off campus by junior year. But even late my sophomore year, I was still happy that there was a big row of endless food at whatever mealtime was. I was like, oh, I have all these options. Because, I'm just, happy. It's kind of like now, if we go out, as long as I don't have to clean or pick up after myself, it's usually a pretty good dinner. So even better if I go to the We Are In, but it's usually a pretty good dinner.
Oh boy.
We plugged them more than we plugged merch this week.
I was just thinking that
Get the stuff at
we have stuff.
stuffsummersays.com. Get the merch.
People were disappointed I didn't wear stuff. I did take stuff with me, but I didn't wear stuff on Saturday to the game. So
I would be disappointed too.
sorry. I'm sorry. All right. That's it for this week's podcast. I do want to. I've said this a couple times already. If you made it this far, you're probably a very loyal listener to this podcast. On behalf of Steve and I, would like to thank you for a very successful September, which success would just be 2 people clicking on a story and 3 people watching or listening to a podcast. We had plenty more than that. So I just want to say thank you. We have a lot of fun doing this. We have a lot of fun putting this together.
Because you were ticking people off. What does
Oh,
that mean?
yeah.
One of us was ticking people off.
It depends on what. Well, it depends on the week. It depends on the week.
Okay.
I think it's your.
On
I think it's your turn.
Probably my turn. Well, I know what I want to write about. I'm going to write about noon games.
God. Okay. All right. All right. All right. There we go. Okay. And then I got to be middleman on all the comments and everything. All right. If you are listening to this podcast and you haven't subscribed to us, make sure you do that. 5 stars, thumbs up. That would be very appreciative. YouTube, subscribe somewhere in there. Thank you to Pat from We Are In for joining us. Pat, we really appreciate it. It was good perspective. But be sure to head up to Philipsburg, check them out. Let's see what else. We've got emails. Steve's got an email. It's
Steve@stuffsummersays.com.
I've got an email. It's Darian@stuffsummersays.com. We have merch on our website, which is stuffsummersays.com. You can find the merch by going to stuffsummersays.com/the-stuff. Now it's getting a little colder. Might add some
warmer
new
stuff.
Add some warmer stuff in there. And I will say, I've said this before, the crew necks are very soft. So I would recommend a crew neck if you're looking to stay warm. But again, might be more stuff.
White crew neck would look good in that Michigan game.
We're a blue section, so
not for you.
Yeah.
We saw both.
We did. But Twitter handle. Real quickly. Mine is at Stuff Summer Says. Steve's is
at Steve Samsel.
Anything else?
Nope.
Okay.
See you.